people want to talk about as well. So let's start with you.
Okay, so I had a question with regard to, I really like the doing the university programs and getting the students interested in that. And I hear you saying that you need to scale. Have you thought about like reaching out to the maker communities and focusing the hacker space and things like that to
Yes.
to try to expand these activities?
I have to say that, yes, I've thought about it. We'll work with a number of organizations, hacking organizations to help, but I only use them in terms of as an advisor. As a one-day coding event, I think those events are performance art.
Our performance art, yeah, because you don't have the time to really finish it.
Right, and also I want the handing off from one generation of student to another. So therefore, work with those hacker organizations, they make great advisors, and they help sort of bridge the gap between one group of students and another. Yes, so I'm working on that. I would love to have a more expansive plan. I would love to do more, but frankly, it's just me.
So I'm actually the director like for Region 6. I typically Region 6, and I'll be director next year. One of the things I was thinking is we had a student contest at the conference here, and some people were talking about their projects.
Yeah.
One of the things I was thinking is, you know, the kind of things you're doing could also be candidates for that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe we should be looking at doing is can we make a more comprehensive program
Right.
for developing, you know, sort of even global activities where we're sharing best practices and how to do this.
So I mean, one of the things that I've been talking about forever is sort of like go down and talk to you guys. You know, I know that you're there. I've talked to a few people in the lab and everything, but we never really made the connection. And why is it? Because we're so freaking busy. But yes, that's the web thinking for. Yeah.
I think it would make a lot of sense to be able to tee these up. I think one thing we've found, we've done a fair amount of stuff with like looking at hacking program, you know, hacking for humanity kinds of things. Where it works is if we define the problem in a concise, articulated way. Not we're going to trying to solve poverty in the world or clean water, something broad like this. But if we take the problem definition, then answers come up, and then, as Maya was saying, really important to then hand it over. Like what we do sometimes is to have the graduate students, like the Engineering for Development Work program, to actually do their final projects, and they start some things and define the problem and maybe articulate the solution. And then the senior design students who work for like 8 months, then take those on and actually build it, work with a social enterprise in the field, like Sylvia was saying, really critical to work with that social enterprise, or some, forget social enterprise, some field-based organization where we can understand the actual deployment, the problems with training people, supporting for all of those things, which are holistic to getting a product out.
I have one more quick comment based on that, which is that we've also had the privilege of working with a high school group who built a user interface for our mobile health worker and ranger technology in Bhutan. And the same class, they all built the same thing, so they all built versions of the same thing. And what was fascinating was that what came out of that were so many elements that nobody else would have thought of, and it actually allowed us to achieve a user interface that was as close as it probably could have come to having the components that were useful for the group to select from, and then the users on site were able to select and kind of expand on that as they needed. So the idea of having a bunch of people work on one thing and come up with their own unique different answers is another possibility for the hacker community, so that you're really getting a broad set of minds working on the same idea.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can use them.
So this is related to Dr. Rainey's questions and some other topics. I used to be the advisor at Stanford of the current football coach, Dave Shaw. So, and I taught the courses on Haiti at Stanford and at the medical school for some time. So I want to talk to the rest of you on sort of offline. But you know, your comment about where are the philosophers, where are the anthropologists, and who are the we when we talk about we are going to do, we are going to, the we, one person can't do everything, you've seen this, but everyone can do something. And there was a question on the internet about the biggest roadblocks. What are the biggest roadblocks to the successful realization and deployment of the technologies? And I think that part of this is who are the we? Who are the people? And if you're not involving at every level, the local experts and the end users, if you're not studying the locally available technologies or medical health or systems, if you don't know the terrain, an engineer cannot go in and design a system for a site they haven't seen. And this is on all levels, medical, psychological, religious, cultural. The map is not the territory. So our work in Haiti has been the result of 12, 13 years of anthropological in-country residence with Stanford students visiting, and there's going to be a presentation by my colleague and engineer Eric Sabelman on the water project, and I hope to talk with some of you later on.
How many times have I been inside an organization working on a project and felt like an amateur anthropologist? I consider myself to be essentially unemployable, proudly, because my number one problem is I walk around in such places I understand too much. You're absolutely on point that we need the anthropologists, we need the philosophers, we even need the poets and artists.
Yes.
They provide perspective. You need photographers. They are trained observers. They see things that we miss. And so I salute your point.
I think that every time when I don't go to these conferences very often, I don't go to conferences very often, but I always hear we need a philosopher. Go get a philosopher. Go hire a philosopher. Go harangue a philosopher to go work in the organization. That's what we do. We need medical student. We go and grab medical student. I think to say that we need this and we need that is sort of like sitting in the dark room. At some point, you turn on a candle.
To your point, a lot of the programs that we work with didn't know how to communicate what they needed. And so I just sent a copy to Sylvia. We finally put together what we call a spec builder. And you guys probably know that term, but it's new to me. But we tried to sort of break that down into how a person might actually express in kind of normal terms what their needs were that could then be interpreted by an engineer. See, but the funny thing is, we work with a group in Tanzania that is doing the build of the mobile technology, and we were just advising and looking over their code and such. And I found that to be like an engineering culture. So they have the same blocks in understanding what people needed and what they were doing on the front lines that our engineers had. And I thought there's so many levels of culture that are crisscrossing and are, that need to intercommunicate.
In fact, I would add that in the whole design innovation process, the empathize and problem definition actually needs less of engineers and much more of, you want to understand the context and the needs and the user. Yeah, people say user interface, oh, that must be an engineer web interface. Not at all. It is about how that healthcare worker in the last mile health, or someone who is, we had this situation where we did reverse osmosis filtration plants for clean water in some large rural areas of northern India. And the first year, it went really well, or the first 6 months, and lots of the clean water, and there was a business angle to it, and water was being sold. And then suddenly it just stopped. And everybody thought it was to do with the technology, et cetera, et cetera. What had actually happened is that water is the one way that women get together, and it's a social gathering for the women every day. And this is the way they go out, they gather by the pond, they talk to each other. It's not just for gossip, it's really also the way they exchange a lot of information. And they were like, you took that away from me? I'll see. So what they did, they decided in these villages that they just would not use the water from that particular jerry can. And they went out by themselves, got the water, came back and kept using it. And the jerry can would never go down. And the guy's jerry can was too large for the women to carry, and the guys would carry it. So they look at it, it's full, and go away. For a period of 3 months, virtually no water was sold. And is that technology? No. Is that user interface? No. It's the anthropologist, it's the behavioral specialist. And finally, by building a pond-like area around those plants and designing the jerry can, we actually trialed it. It was designed by some students up in Mission Peak. A student's wife took it up and down, with the jerry can. And having that there, it then made it possible for the women to actually go back, except the pond was replaced by the reverse osmosis filtration plant, and then the clean water started to flow. So that becomes so critical in your
So in practical social enterprise, I don't know how much you've come and seen on the ground. And one thing that I've seen is that there's this thought about both scale and sustainability of social enterprises being talked together, and the attitude and the belief in a lot of entrepreneurs, if you will, is that scale is going to bring sustainability in business model. And it's extremely counterintuitive in the social enterprise space that anytime you force them to scale, their sustainability model kind of breaks, and they require a separate intervention, whether it's grants or funding, to kind of scale. And this has to do with how their model is in terms of the ratio between volunteers and full-time working in social enterprises and so on and so forth. That's one observation I made. And what's your experience of that in the ground? Because it seems like the new impact money is becoming more of a curse than a boon, because it's coming to this philosophy of lack of understanding that scale breaks sustainability, and that's extremely counterintuitive for probably somebody here in Silicon Valley. But that's the fact on the ground, just because of how social enterprises work. And I think there needs to be more education here that scale is not necessarily good and might break social enterprises to be sustainable. And the second, the most common misnomer, this is because I've been here a week now, meeting with 4 or 5 large foundations for doing impact work, primarily because I've been working with the investee companies and trying to come back here and educate these foundations that some of their expectations are a little unreasonable. The second part of it that I've observed, and I would like your thoughts since all of your technologists, is that it's quite often misunderstood whether technology is solving the problem or technology is the solution for scale. And in most social enterprise cases, these two aspects of technology are different. I don't know if people talking about technology have been able to distinguish this when they're talking about technology. I don't see that distinguishing made very clearly. So I would like to hear your thoughts on both of these points.
I was going to, as you were asking the question, I had actually a section on social enterprises and scaling and funding organizations and the different, but we didn't get a chance to, but I was sorry, I wanted to get up and jump because now tee this up and request people to, I spent 7 months in the field because we run a social enterprise. We run actually both a nonprofit and a social enterprise. And the questions you bring up and the way investors invest, we truly believe that there are certain aspects of what we do. We happen to run a skilling and livelihoods of rural marginalized youth and women, and trained about 30,000 people, and 80% of them are in jobs or doing entrepreneurship or are actually, we have IT project center where they do global projects, so they can be in 3 different places. But the reason I bring that up is we were absolutely convinced in the 6 years of working is that there is not, you can't just go with impact investing and say, okay, everything is to scale financially, only then you get scalability and sustainability. There are certain things that are done through funds and grants. It's like a horizontal capital aggregation. There's grants, there's debt funding, there's equity funding, there are demand dividends, so there's a bunch of things, and it is in your life cycle, what you need is different in each part of it. And we actually run, that's why we run these hybrid models, and some of the hardest things, I think, are being able to take the social enterprise, and I take that as I treat nonprofits, profit social enterprises, and really look at what funding model works in which phase, and to actually bring it back to people in Silicon Valley to be able to share that.
I mean, not even that, but I'm a little more specific, saying the life cycle of the enterprise obviously requires different interventions.
Yeah.
And I'm very familiar with that, but I'm specific in just terms of, for example, your impact area could be Karnataka, and then suddenly, I don't know, just for namesake, Acumen Fund puts in money and says you need to move to 3 other states, and then your model breaks or the scale just doesn't work like that. And that sensitivity is the sensitivity of capital I'm talking about. You're not the life cycle of the enterprise itself, so that I understand very well. But this is something I don't see people getting here that easily. They just think that scale happens across geographies, and it's very hard. I need to tell them to India is a country 200-kilometer radius, so think differently. People behave differently, but the cultural, socio-cultural, and political aspect seems to be missing, and it seems like they believe that once the enterprise cracks one place, they forget the impact of the NGO. And the DNA of the social enterprise, again, very important, because I believe I've seen 2 types of DNA. One is an entrepreneur who's made it successful, who comes back, becomes a social entrepreneur and partners with an NGA, and that social enterprise has a different DNA than an NGO actually moving upwards and forming a Section 25 and becoming a social enterprise. So it seems to me that the DNA of the social enterprise could be either ways, and that's kind of confusing a lot of investors.
I think it's interesting because I was doing a project, and I thought we did a superb job, and then the word back from the client was, basically they, lack of a better expression, bought all of our proposal. And I was very puzzled, so I went and talked to a friend of mine who was very wise and very smart, and he looked at me and he said, I said, what did I do wrong? What did we do wrong? And he says, you didn't do anything wrong. They just want to find a reason to say no. Okay? What you just described to me when a fund, it doesn't matter what kind of fund it is, come in and say, you must expand in 3 states for yourself to be successful. They want to find a way to say no to you. Okay? There's money, and there's smart money, and there's dumb money. Okay? The problem with a social entrepreneur is when you see money, you first have to chase after whether it's dumb or smart. Right? Because, oh my God, I need this money. Okay? I'm suggesting that maybe sometime you, as a social entrepreneur, you set up and you say, this is dumb money, I'm not chasing after it. Because what you're doing, you're setting me up for failure. I agree with you. I think that many of these foundations and organizations are so result-oriented. They feel they have to show that they are so good and they do a great thing and they provide immediate result. We don't ask that from the Sequoia of this world. We don't ask that of the benchmark. Why should we ask that from these people? In Silicon Valley, we say if you fail 9 startups, we still give you money to do the 10th one. I challenge you to do that in the social entrepreneur side.
It's not just dumb or smart money either. It's also what is appropriate for you. Could be very smart money for XYZ person there, but matching that money to your need. I eventually think that the entrepreneur or the enterprise has to just say, this is my mission, this is where I want to go, and then look for the appropriate money rather than the other.
I have one right now as we speak.
The caveat there is that's really not the money that I'm talking about, in the sense the money is actually the deal is not made that way. It's actually like, oh, I see finally a winner in this space in the social enterprise. It's more like I'm doubling down on you, can you take that money?
Let's
really
take this offline and talk about this.
Yeah, I think there are some other questions.
Yeah, might be other questions.
Good afternoon. I have a question for everybody in the room. Who knows Lucy? Everybody has heard about Lucy?
No. I spoke to you yesterday.
Usually,
It is an inflatable solar lantern. And this MIT technology review from 2013, and they say here 1 billion people in the dark. So in other words, buying this little thing. We talk about funding and getting money and all the things. This little thing, in large quantities, you can get it for $9. And you can buy it in stores here, in sporting, camping stores. And if you have a village of 200, 500 people, 100 or 200 huts, if you supply this to that hut, they have light the whole night. If they put this in the sun during the day and during the night, they turn it around and you blow it up and it looks like that. You can get it. You can take a look at it. Okay. And there are millions of people who want to help the poor people in Africa and other countries. And here, everybody can send a few things to Africa. And this is a start. If you cannot wait 12 hours at night in the equatorial areas, then what do you do, right? It would be terrible for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. Yes.
Successful practitioner.
Hi everyone, my name is Locke, and I'm a current senior student, college student, and I'd like to tap on a STEM education system that we have in the United States right now. The issue is, first of all, I want to put out the question first, like how could you engage in engineering students when they are very busy with in your course, when they are busy and again exhausted with on our engineering courses. I didn't say that the courses are not helpful, but how could you get them energetic again, and then how could you engage more students in your classes? Another thing is I've observed is I'm confused after 4 years of engineering school, because I don't know what I'm doing, and then I don't know why am I studying this or why am I doing that. So how
welcome to the real world. Welcome to anthropology.
Right. So I think the problem is that engineering students tend not to study other courses, to see the overview of the real problems that we're having. So how could you, as professors, help in this problem, and how could we students help to solve this problem?
Yeah, we were just talking about this actually before. We offer these courses and
we are just discussing that. We offer these courses and I think it's so exciting, but for some of the engineers it's really hard because they have a pack a day and they are so busy with homework and all that. But what we do, what I've been trying to do is come up with courses that actually they can use as an elective for their course load anyway. So it's embedded in the whole thing and they can use that for their graduation. And in my case, we have senior design, so all my seniors have to go through a project anyway. So I try to advertise the fact that that's an option. Do your project related to social benefit? And I end up with 20 every year because I think it's so interesting. So basically, as a professor, what I've been doing is trying to not create extra things for them, but try to embed that into whatever they have to do anyways, either an elective course or a senior project that they're all gonna have to do.
add to that. So to just
We actually starting now in Engineering 1. In Engineering 1, the first module of first year of freshmen, every freshman student goes through module of innovation, frugal innovation, and developing engineering for developing world, technology for social and societal impact. We go through introduce it, and could be any branch of engineering. They go through both a lecture and a lab module. And so by the time they're going through their freshman year, they're actually starting to think about projects, and then they're going into Professor Figuera for computer engineering, or someone thinks of, I want to do a vaccine transport, that solar powered vaccine transport in a mechanical engineering or something else. And it's embedded into them. They actually even start doing it during summer projects. So even coming into, we have sophomores
who are starting to work with us on projects. And of course, the senior design, which is an 8-month, 7 to 8 month, is absolutely great for them to actually have projects completed and taken to the field.
So I have a slightly different perspective I'll just add, which is I think maybe like Mai in her course, she has people come to speak in her course who are outside of engineering, and maybe that's something that engineering students can ask for, demand, or should be part of it. She had Bill Fahey come, who eradicated polio. She had Jack Chow, who's one of the top people in the government, ran the WHO, and I mean, that's from the medical side and the ones I came to. She's had several other people from other